Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lori. Today I wanted to do a video on some of the behaviors or ways in which we may be living as we start shifting into higher states of consciousness or the next dimensional space, fourth dimension, and then eventually the fifth dimension. And I'm speaking on this because I've been noticing it quite prevalently in my life right now. And these behaviors are getting more and more prevalent. So I'm noticing these things happening more and more in my life. And I also communicate, work with, and experience multidimensional beings, including fifth dimensional beings like the Lemurians. And so I understand how they are, and I understand their frequency and their energy and the way in which they sort of move about in their dimension. And so as I'm watching humanity and myself starting to shift into these higher states of consciousness, I can sometimes get blown away because I'm like, oh my God, we actually really are shifting into another dimension. Because again, I experience these beings, I feel them, I communicate with them, I stand with them in the etheric realm. And so I know their resonance, I know their vibration, I know the way in which they move about, and we're moving there. We really, really actually are. So one of the ways, or a couple of the ways that I'm noticing my own self and other people around me, including my clients, starting to show signs that we are really shifting is, and this is happening right now because of this huge energetic sort of opening or portal that we just walked into. So the veils are getting thinner and thinner and thinner. When a portal opens, or people talk about portals opening or stargates opening or really potent, I think they call them like blasts from the sun or something. I'm not exactly sure what they call them, but there's teachers that call them something with regards to the sun bringing in a huge amount of light. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but these are just energetic frequencies. It's like an upgrade that we're getting, right, from our own physical body, and mental body and emotional body and etheric body. And so we're basically being moved into a little bit higher frequency, and the veil gets a little bit thinner each time. So that film that holds this third dimensional matrix around us is slowly evaporating, getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. So people talk about the veils are getting thin. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about this, you could almost see it like a membrane around the third dimensional world, third dimensional field, the earth and all its inhabitants. And everything else is outside of that field, trying to penetrate that membrane. Including ourselves, we're trying to penetrate the membrane in order to move into a higher frequency. And it's actually not a physical membrane. So when we are shifting, we're shifting right here, right? We're not actually going anywhere. We're not moving into a space. We're not moving into a dimension. We're not moving out of something into something. We are integrating ourselves into a higher frequency. We are integrating ourselves into a higher frequency. So when the veil thins, it just means that we have access to higher frequencies. And we always talk about it as if it is sort of above, or at least I do, right? Because it's just easier to sort of understand it, but it's not above us. It is within us. And so when the veil thins, it allows us to experience higher vibrational frequencies of us, or higher vibrational beings that are around us, or our higher selves, or our I am presence, right? So the veil being thin, all that really means is that this mucous membrane type third dimensional field that has constricted us and held us down in this sort of matrix where we were only seeing so much is thinning, and now we're experiencing more aspects of ourself, our multidimensionality, other dimensions, other frequencies. We're channeling. All these gifts are starting to pop up that are innately within us, right? So what I've been noticing with myself and my clients is one of the things that starts to happen as we start shifting into a higher state of consciousness is we start to understand that we are sovereign beings and that we have been designed to remember this. And what does it mean that we're sovereign beings? It means that yes, we're in a collective, and yes, we are in one huge, beautiful earth plane, and we're all walking around together, and we're all experiencing many of the same things. We've been programmed the same way. We watch the same things. We feel the same way about a lot of things. There are rules, regulations, theories, ways in which you navigate the earth plane that we all participate in. What happens when you start shifting into higher states of consciousness is you start to separate or individuate yourself, individuate if that's even a word, individuate yourself from this collective space, this collective vibration, the programming, the realities, the theories, the laws, all these things in which we have been designed to live in. We are starting to literally individually separate ourselves out of based on whatever frequency you're vibrating at. And so one by one, we're starting to move out of these old programs, right? And we are starting to understand that we hold our own knowingness. We hold our own sovereign field around us. Everything we need to know is held in this sovereign space. All of the answers are held in this sovereign space. It's just a matter of you starting to remember, you starting to be able to access it, you starting to be able to hear it. So when you go to a psychic or a reader or somebody that's going to read your guides or connect you to your guides or to your past or your future, right? They're reading your energy field. And that is something that you yourself obviously can do. It's just a matter of continuing to allow yourself to raise your consciousness, which is a natural thing that's happening on the earth plane. So you can practice and learn how to do it more and more through tools and being conscious and aware of your ego and your mind. There's all these ways in which you can begin to assist this shifting that we're doing into higher states of consciousness, but also know that it's happening naturally. It's naturally occurring. So if you do absolutely nothing, you will eventually be able to hear your higher self. You will eventually be able to hear the guides around you. You absolutely, unequivocally, 1000% will be able to at some point down the road, but you can move it along a little bit faster if you start to get conscious of your ego, conscious of your mind, conscious of your reality and your choices, conscious of voices you're hearing. There's all kinds of ways. I don't want to go into that I don't want to go down that path right now. The point being is that when you start doing this, you understand that nobody needs to tell you anything, right? And there's nothing that you necessarily, when you are learning things, right? When you are learning what is happening around you, it's just a remembrance. So it's somebody outside of you reminding you of what you already know. That's those aha moments, right? And so as you continue to have those aha moments, as you continue to step out of this matrix, out of the programming, the paradigms, the collective, right? You start to understand that you're sovereign. And then what starts to happen is you start to go up against, you are intuitively and innately feeling like you can't follow that anymore. You can't follow the way you've been doing things. You can't follow what is the good or right thing to do. For instance, if you make plans with somebody, God forbid you should cancel them right before that event is going to take place. Because humans are not supposed to cancel plans, right? You're just not supposed to. Why? It's one of those rules, it's one of those polite things that the human does, right? It's just what you do. If somebody calls you on the phone and you don't want to talk to them, right? A lot of us will have this feeling of, oh my God, I have to talk to them. You know, I'm supposed to talk to them. Or if I don't talk to them, I absolutely need to return their phone call at some point. And there's a time frame that the human believes is a polite time frame, right? There's all these, and those are just two really random examples, but there are all these ways in which we have been taught to live, right? All these polite way rules, all these like good and bad behaviors, right? All these things. And when you start to shift into higher states of consciousness, all of that gets thrown out the window. Because the only thing that matters is that you are true to your aligned state, which means that you feel what feels right to you, what feels good to you. And the more you start shifting into higher states of consciousness, the more you're going to feel what resonates and what doesn't. I don't feel like going and seeing that person. Yeah, but you always do on that Sunday. And they're waiting for you and they're expecting you and you're going to hurt their feelings, right? But then you come back to yourself and you say, okay, well, those are beautiful programs that the human has. And what would feel best for me is that if I honored what resonated within my own vibration and frequency, which is that I don't want to go and do that, right? And that's as far as it goes. So as you don't start buying into all the other things that we've told ourselves about that situation. When you start raising your consciousness and others around you are not, that is when you start to butt heads. That is when you have to start to have really strong, firm boundaries. That is when you start to learn very powerful, loud no's, right? No. We have to be taught how to stand in our sovereign space because we are taught and programmed that doing that is selfish, that doing that is not thinking about others, that doing that is egocentric. There are all these things that the human puts on being sovereign, being in your own space, saying no, having firm boundaries, especially, I hate to say this, but if you're a woman, it's even worse. God forbid a woman should have really firm boundaries. God forbid a woman should say no over and over and over again, right? And this happens for men as well. I'm just saying that for the woman right now, this shift in consciousness is really challenging because we have been programmed to put others in front of us, kind of shelter ourselves. God forbid we should be loud. God forbid we should have this obnoxiously loud voice and speak it, right? And so when you shift, when you start vibrating at a higher frequency, you aren't going to have a choice anymore. It's not going to feel good what you've been doing. For instance, let's just say that you work in a group of other people. So you're in a group with other people and that's your work environment. And for years you've gotten along with them, even though you have known that you compromise all the time. You keep your mouth shut all the time, right? You do things that you don't want to do all the time. And it's been okay. But recent, you can't do it anymore. You can't keep your mouth shut. You can't say yes over and over and over again. You can't go to the events that they're asking you to go to. It literally hurts you inside on an energetic level, a physical level, an emotional level, a mental level. All your subtle bodies that are vibrating at a specific frequency. Remember, your subtle bodies, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the etheric, are all energy. Even your physical body, it's energy. And it's vibrating faster. And so when you shoot yourself into and merge yourself into these lower vibrational situations, as you're shifting out of them, it's going to be painful and you're not going to be able to do it anymore. So all of a sudden you're going to be bumping against people and you're going to say to yourself, am I doing the right thing? Maybe this isn't the right thing. I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like I want to say no? And then you're going to say to yourself, well, if I say no, there's all these rules, right? You might not even be conscious of the rules, but the rules are you can't hurt somebody else's feelings. You can't disappoint somebody else. You can't have somebody have an expectation and not meet that person's expectation. These are all programs in a third dimensional frequency. They do not exist in higher frequencies. They don't exist in a higher frequency. So we're talking about moving into a fifth dimensional space, a fifth dimensional frequency, the new earth. Well, guess what, you guys? The new earth doesn't hold any ability to have an expectation on someone else, right? So the other person isn't going to have an expectation on you. You're not going to have an expectation on them. There is going to be no resentments. There's going to be no I have to's. There's no I have to's. I need to, I should, those kinds of things. No. So we, as third dimensional humans, most of us, 99% of us, are still living for the most part in a third dimensional frequency, even though we shift. Throughout our day, we will shift, and then we'll shift back down. And we're starting to shift higher and higher into a fourth dimensional frequency. And we're living more in a fourth dimensional space, more and more and more and more and more, even though we're in a third dimensional matrix. And then some of us are starting to shift a little bit into this fifth dimensional frequency and starting to hold these fifth dimensional attributes over and over and over again as we're standing in this third dimensional matrix. So our energetic field is tapping into these fifth dimensional attributes of a human, tapping into the fourth dimensional attributes of a human. So one of the attributes that I've been noticing that is happening to myself and to others around me is this absolute necessary aspect of us, which is no's and firm boundaries, firm boundaries, regardless of how somebody else is going to respond. Most of us are human, and so we want to make sure that we don't upset people. We want to make sure that we take care of other people. You want to make sure that you don't disappoint, those kinds of things, right? And so we're sacrificing ourselves. We can't do that anymore. And this is about being in your sovereign space, your sovereign field. And what you'll start to notice as you begin to say no or yes, whatever it is that resonates, one, you'll start to notice that you're in your body more and more and more. The way you know whether you are resonating with something or whether you're just being a robot living your life is you're going to feel it. If somebody asks you to do something, you're going to intuitively know right away whether it's a yes or a no. You're also going to know that if you say yes, I know that in 3 days I'm going to want to say no. I should just say no now, right? You're going to start to feel all of this. When somebody says, hey, I'll give you a call in 2 days and we can talk. Or hey, I want you to go do this thing, or do you want to do this event with me? Whatever it is, right? Even if it's a bigger thing of a breaking up with somebody, or separating from somebody, or separating from a job, separating from a place you live, right? You intuitively know what resonates. But then you start to think about all of the things that are going to come from that decision, and you quiet yourself, right? Until you can't hold it any longer. So we're being asked, and we are starting to step into our sovereignty. What is our truth? What do we believe? What do we know? What do we feel? Regardless of the consequence, quote unquote consequence, because there isn't any, but the consequence of another human that may not be vibrating at your same frequency. Now get this. If you have friends and family that are vibrating at the same frequency as you, it's glorious as you start shifting. It is so easy because they get it too. So they're like, oh yeah, no problem. I don't care if you cancel last minute. Let's stay in the present moment, right? I don't care. You don't want to talk on the phone? Great. We'll talk whenever you're ready to talk. 5 months from now? Perfect, right? They're in the same vibration. They get it. It makes life so much easier. But when you are, and this is most of us, have people around us that are not vibrating and are at the same frequency that we are, that is when it becomes quite the challenge, especially for all of you that are in relationships with people that are not at that same frequency as you are. Because as you start to shift, you can't keep your mouth shut, right? You start to stand up for yourself. You start to speak your truth. You start to say no, and these people aren't used to it. Going back to that example of the person in the group, in the work environment, right? And you've always been saying yes, and you've always been doing it this certain way. And all of a sudden, people are looking around because you're saying no. You're not showing up to these events anymore. You're not, laying on your back and saying, do whatever you want. I don't care. All of a sudden you're caring. All of a sudden you're standing up for yourself, and they're either making fun of you, or they're confused, or they're having their own sort of energetic exchange about it. And then it makes you start to think, well, am I doing something wrong? Should I not be doing this? Should I go back to my old way of being? And deep down you can't go back. That's the thing about shifting. When you start shifting, you can't go back. It's so painful to start to move back. So if you are starting to feel this inside of you of like, oh my God, I'm having to stand up for myself more. Oh my God, I'm having to say no more and more. Oh my God, I'm having to have firmer boundaries around my space, around people. And what you'll first notice if you're not standing up for yourself or saying no or putting up boundaries, what you'll notice is how uncomfortable you are in the situations that you used to be comfortable in, right? Meaning you'll go out to dinner, you didn't want to go to dinner, and you are so you're so uncomfortable in your skin in that dinner because you don't want to be there. And you're biting your tongue and kicking yourself because you put yourself there once again, right? Those feelings are going to get stronger and stronger and stronger until you start to act, right? Until you start to say, okay, enough is enough. I have to speak for myself, right? And the other thing that's happening, and I've spoken about this before in another video or two, is we are being asked to stop being herded like cows, okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with the way our system works, the matrix, okay? But it doesn't work when you start shifting to higher states of consciousness. You start to come out of this field and you start to see things very differently. And one of the things that you'll start to notice is that this third dimensional frequency likes to be in control. And it likes to herd collectives. It likes to take collectives, put them into one big bundle, and then the humans as a collective move together. They all believe the same thing. They all follow the same thing. They all react the same way, right? God forbid if everybody's in a situation and you're not reacting in the same way, right? People are going to look at you like you're nuts. So we are programmed and we are designed in a third dimensional frequency to follow herds. That's what the news does for us, right? It tells us what to think, tells us what to feel, tells us what to believe. Those are paradigms, belief systems, right? As you shift, you are starting to pull yourself out of these and start to say to yourself, oh my God, everything I've been taught is not necessarily reality out here in this other frequency. It's not real. It's not true. Everything I've been taught, all these things. And truths and facts and all these things that we've been taught for so long are starting to crumble anyways because we're shifting into higher states of consciousness. So what existed in a third dimensional state, a truth in the third dimensional state is absolutely unequivocally 1000% not a truth in a fourth dimensional state. It doesn't come along. Okay, so all these truths, all these facts, all these scientific theories in third dimension do not hold in the fourth dimension. So as you start to shift into a higher state of consciousness, you're going to look back and say, holy cow, that's not true. Those things aren't true anymore. That's actually not true anymore. You individualize yourself. You individuate yourself. You take yourself out of the collective. And what the uncomfortable part of this is that you're standing around thinking, am I nuts? Am I by myself? Is there anybody else believing this? Is there anybody else thinking this? This includes the spiritual community as well, right? Because the spiritual community holds itself around theories and beliefs and programs, right? And so as you start to shift into higher states of consciousness, depending upon who you are around, who you are listening to, who you are watching, who you are looking at, their beliefs, theories, ideas, opinions are either going to resonate or not, depending upon what you are vibrating at. And when you start shifting out of the third dimensional frequency and vibration, these are not going to vibrate with you anymore. They're not going to make sense. And you're going to be standing here going, is there anybody else around me that is understanding this? And that space is when you start to come back to yourself. This space is when you start to go in. This space is when you say, you know what, maybe nobody knows anything. Maybe nobody knows more than I do about myself. Maybe nobody knows more than me. Maybe I should start looking inside. Maybe I should stop looking outward for all the answers and start looking inward. That is shifting into a higher state of consciousness. If you find yourself saying no more and more and more and more and more to people because you need to be firm, you need to be honoring yourself, that's shifting into a higher state of consciousness. If you are recognizing and needing to have firmer and firmer and firmer and firmer boundaries, that's shifting into a higher state of consciousness because you're understanding that you're a sovereign being and you don't need to do anything for anyone unless it resonates with you. If you are starting to recognize that you are shifting out of very old paradigms and belief systems and looking back and saying, holy cow, that just doesn't resonate anymore. You're shifting if you are starting to stand out by yourself and say, nothing resonates with me anymore. There's very few teachers I like to listen to. There's very few books I like to read. There are very few things on TV that I'm actually learning from. That's because you're in a higher state of consciousness. And when you go into that higher state of consciousness, you are being directed back into yourself, because you have always been the only one that knows what is your truth. But we live in a matrix where we are told from the moment we come into a body who we are, what we believe, what we know, what we feel, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. All these things were thrown at, and your individuality is gone. By 1 year, forget about it. And then it just gets worse. Shifting into higher states of consciousness brings you right back to yourself, right back to your knowingness. And that's the challenge. That's the challenge. We are stepping out of very old paradigms, very old programming, and it can be uncomfortable. But the point of this video is to let you know that if you are feeling uncomfortable in these shifts, that's okay. It's designed that way. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be this blissful, beautiful, higher frequency that you're going to feel. You're going to have to learn these behaviors, these ways of being in a higher state of consciousness that, as we are learning them, are not necessarily easy, can be a challenge at times, right? Navigating it, figuring it out, because we haven't done it before. If you haven't done it, you're going to look around and say, is anyone else doing this? Am I the only one? And how do I do this? How do I stay strong? How do I stay firm? How do I come into my own sovereign space? How do I remember that I am the one that knows the most about me and what I need, right? And what is my truth? How clear can I get on the programming that we have all been held under for so long that we are shifting out of? And I'm talking about programming for everything, even the things that we think are really, really good for us. There's programming around everything. It can get very complex when you start to think about all the programming. But the point is that you're shifting, and it's uncomfortable at times, and it requires us to learn these behaviors. And the ones I talked about today on this video are just a minuscule, they're just a tiny amount of the enormous behaviors that we are, or ways of being, I should say. Behavior is not the word. Ways of being in a higher dimension, ways of being in a higher frequency. So if you're noticing that you're doing things that you don't want to do anymore, don't do them. Honor yourself. It gets easier and easier. Let humans have their own experience about what you're doing. Let them have their own experience. Let them react. We need to stop basing our choices and our decisions on others, and they'll catch up. They'll catch up. They will. Do what is best for you as often as you can, and listen to what is your truth. Listen to what feels right. Listen to what resonates. I'm telling you, you will find yourself in more flow. You will find yourself in more ease. You will find yourself in more grace, and you will find yourself in more alignment if you can do those things in your life that feel good, that resonate with you. Resonate means that you energetically connect to it. It's like a match. So if you're finding yourself doing things in your everyday life where it is not an energetic match, how do you know if it's an energetic match? It feels good. Now, not everything we're going to do is going to feel good. I get it. Don't comment like that, because I know jobs don't feel good all the time. Certain people that you have to be around for whatever reason don't feel good. I get that. But the choices that we make, as often as we can we make choices that make us feel good, which means it's coming from our hearts, right? Does it make us feel good? Is there a resonance, an energetic resonance? Otherwise, the other option is a pulling. It's almost like you can't get far away. You can't get far enough away from that energetic frequency, and yet you're in it, right? You're in it, and all you want to do is get out of it, get out of it, get out of it, get out of it, get out of it. But you can't, because you're still in it. which is how we're programmed and designed to live in a really strange way. So just notice in your everyday life, as you're walking around, as you're making decisions, as you're doing agreements or non-agreements with people, as you're in relationship with people, as you're getting out of relationship with people, if you're doing your job and your work, going to the yoga studio, whatever it is you're doing, right? Notice if, as you're moving about in your day, if there's a resonance or if there's a pulling back. How do you feel? You know, are you making agreements or plans or things in advance with somebody and you know you don't want to? You know, are you in a situation, in a room, in a place, close to somebody where you don't want to be in that? Then don't, right? Pay attention. Just pay attention, because you're shifting into higher states of consciousness, and you're being asked to feel it, and you're being asked to stand in your own sovereign space. Stand up for yourself, right? And don't be afraid to stand out from the rest of the group. Don't be afraid to step out of the group and stand on your own. What is your truth? These collective truths are breaking up anyways. You might as well be the first to step out of it. They're breaking up. These third dimensional truths, these third dimensional collective ways of being are breaking up. So it's okay to step out, be the first one to step out and say, I don't believe this. I don't agree with this. I'm not following this. Anyways, I hope that was helpful. I don't know how my videos get to 30 minutes. I feel like I talk so quickly. I have no idea. Anyways, thank you all for joining. I think, yeah, okay, I'm just going to hold that. Please comment below if you have a comment about this video. If you liked it, like it. If you love my videos, please subscribe to my channel. Also, pass this video along. If there's anybody that is moving through this, like, firmer boundaries, saying no, what resonates, what doesn't resonate, finding themselves in situations in their life where all the people around them are not shifting with them. That's a huge one right now, you guys. I should do a video just on that. How do we navigate this process of ascension when all of the people around us are not moving with us? Big challenge. But pass this along to anybody that needs to hear this message, that they're okay to keep going, that it's natural what is being asked of them, and it's natural to feel the struggle of it and to keep going. They're shifting, you're shifting, we're shifting, we are moving. And this is what the day-to-day, everyday aspects of moving into the new earth feels like, right? I know there's a ton of people that talk about the bigger perspective of it, right? Like, oh, there's these photon things and your light body's shifting and you're moving this way and you're going to move into your heart and like all these things. It's like, okay, that's great. But like, what the freak do I do in my everyday? What do I do in my everyday? How do I hold firmer boundaries? How do I say no? How do I know that what I'm going through is okay? What does sovereignty even mean? How do I move into my own space? How do I come back into myself? All of these things we're trying to learn together. I'm doing it at the same time you are. We're all doing this together. Nobody's better than the other person. So we're learning. We're just learning how to navigate this. How do I get from one frequency to another? It's quite elementary in one aspect. We are literally just moving from one frequency to another, and yet it is monumental because it requires us to be completely different humans when we shift. So you can't take the aspect of you that has been living a certain way for a certain amount of years with you into this other dimension and this other frequency that we are all shifting into. You can't. You can't do it. So as much as you want to sit and meditate, and as much as you want to bring in all the light that you want to bring in and, move into these really high frequencies, do that. But guess what? You still got to plop yourself right back down into your physical body and go out into the world and talk with your parents or your grandparents or your children or your coworkers, and you're going to feel dissonance. You're not going to feel resonance. You're not going to say what's your truth. You're going to hide behind things. Your alignment isn't going to be the same necessarily, right? So the point is this shifting and these ways of being need to be practiced, need to be spoken about, need to be talked about, need to be shared. We're all doing it. We're all going through it. And again, these are just 2 or 3 of the millions of ways of being that we're shifting into. And I just felt it was important to talk about these. Anyways, I hope this made sense. Thank you again. I love you all so much for being here. I love you so much for sharing my videos and just being part of this community and this evolutionary shift that we're all going through. Thank you for coming down onto the planet. Thank you for being in a physical body, kind of pushing your light into this physical form so that you can be here and experience this physicality, this playground. And I will see you all next time. So much love to you. Be gentle with yourselves. Bye.